In this session, I'm going to be talking about the network architecture POE. This is the final video for the network architecture POE that's due next week, Thursday. So there's been a couple of questions related to the POE. So where I'm going to start is with the marking rubric for the POE and to give you some guidance as to how to put the POE need to watch the first 3 videos as well, and in addition to this final video that I'm recording. Now let's look at this was the marking rubric. Okay, final marking rubric. Now the amount of work that you need to do for any assessment needs to be in proportion to the mark allocation. In other words, I'm not going to spend 5 hours on a task if it's only going to give me 1 mark. So I need to look at the POE marking rubric and do this with your test and with your exam as well, for whichever module. Look at the mark allocation and then only make a decision as to how much of time am I actually going to spend on each of these activities, and make sure that you address all of the activities to get the maximum marks. So you can see that we've got 5 activities in total. The first activity counts 10 marks. The next one is 5 marks. The next one is 3 marks, is 10 marks. Activity 3 is 10 marks. Activity 4 is 15. So I can see this carries the major marks, right? And then activity 5 is 10 marks. So the total is out of 50. So roughly each of the activities is about 1/5 or 20%. Okay, but here we can see that activity 4, which is the presentation, counts a bit more, and then activity 2 counts less, which is your ICE activities. Okay, so how do I go about now putting my POE together? Some other questions that were asked were, can I take a screenshot of the feedback for activity 1 and activity 2, the lecture feedback? Yes, you can. Okay, so can you submit a PDF document? Yes, you can. Any file format that is acceptable by RC Learn is fine to submit. But my recommendation would be to submit either a PDF, to submit a Word document, or then to submit your PowerPoint presentation. So as I mentioned previously in the previous video, I made a MP3 MPEG-4 file. I recorded it, right? That's not necessary. You need to submit minimum file size. So minimum file size you can get by, firstly, when you're recording your presentation, do not turn your video on. That increases the size of the file. You can record just audio. Okay, it needs to be a narrated presentation, and we'll come across the mark allocation just now. So if I'm looking at now submission of part 1 with the feedback, you can submit your original part 1, or you can submit the marked one from RC Learn. Either one is fine with me, as long as you've copied your marking rubric. Okay, then that the lecturer's feedback has been addressed. Remember when I did the previous video, I gave you a document here. So we created a folder. There's it here, network architecture, POE, and there's my student number. Now I'm not going to zip this file and submit a zip file. I'm going to submit each of the individual documents as follows. Okay. So for activity 1, can you see how I've labeled them? They all are labeled, so you can see that you have clearly answered each of the different activities. And then when I'm doing the mark allocation, it makes it much easier for you to receive full marks or to receive maximum marks if I can see everything has been addressed. As I've said previously, do not include everything in one document, and then also don't zip the file and submit it. Submit it individually. Okay. Now, activity 1, the corrected part 1. the one, see, first you say with the feedback, then next you submit. So there's just two documents you submit for activity one. The one is with the feedback, where this can be a PDF document or it can be a Word document. You have included a screenshot or you copy and pasted the marking rubric, either one of the two. Now, in this updated and corrected part one, what is it that I need to do? So if I open up the updated and corrected part one document, okay, now what do they say? They say an updated and corrected part two as per the lecturer's feedback. Where did you lose marks according to the marking rubric, and what improvements can you make? This is all that is required here. So what I would do here is I would go to my part one marking rubric, and I can see under explain how Ethernet deals with two computers transmitting at the same time. You should also explain how modern Ethernet increases network performance. So I can say in this document, to copy and paste, just to make it easier for myself. So in this document here, I'm going to say that I lost marks in this question, right? So you can submit many questions or you can submit just the ones that you have lost marks. So you can clearly see that I didn't get 100% for many of these, right? The first one I got 100%. There's no improvements that I can make. So at least one or more needs to be included here where you say, okay, give local prices for suitable hardware. Here I got 6 out of 10. So I'm going to paste that here, and then I'm going to say, in the questions above, I did not get 100%. I could have improved by, in question 1.2, what could I have improved? I could have improved. I could have improved by stating how modern Ethernet, so remember to use F7 on your keyboard, which is the spell check, right? There should be no spelling errors in your documents because Word automatically corrects your spelling. So I could have improved by stating how modern Ethernet improves performance by using switches and by segmenting the network. Okay. Now remember, if I go back to this document here, I can see how much of marks am I actually going to get for this. I'm just going to get 1 mark. All right. So it does not have to be a lot. But what needs to be done in the document is I need to clearly indicate that I am aware of where I lost my marks and what improvement could I have made. Okay. And then it says brief explanation of what is recommended and how you have implemented it, right? So what improvements did you make and what did you learn, right? So here I'm just going to correct that spelling, Ethernet. All right, there's the spelling. I'll answer the question here. Okay, did I learn? I learned that I could use switches and that I could use segmenting, which is also subnetting of the network, right? Segmenting and switches, segmenting and subnetting of an Ethernet network improves performance. Okay, so I could do exactly the same for the other one here. Give local prices of hardware and software that you recommend. So I could say here, for example, in question 2.4, I only listed hardware components. I could have also included software like Office 365 or graphics programs, apps. Okay, so that if I've lost marks, there must be some way if I could have improved. But what if I got 100%? What do I do then? You can just state for this assessment or for this question, I got 100%. Although I got 100%, I felt I could have done more in the following areas. I could have done additional research on Ethernet networks. I could have maybe included an Ethernet diagram, although Ethernet diagram was not asked for. So what improvements could I have made for my own learning? It's not just about getting 100%. It's also how do I continue to learn from this assessment, from this POE? Having done part one and having done part two, what more could I learn about this networking module? Because the whole purpose about me learning networking is so that when I enter the workforce next year, or when I go on to further qualifications or further years of study, I'm going to be using what I learned here and build on my knowledge. Even in the workplace, the person that is more skilled and has additional knowledge to what is required will make greater progress. Okay, so this is what is required now for this part here that says submission of the part one with feedback, and then the next two, 3 marks. So this next document counts 3 marks. There's the 3 marks that you're going to get for doing what we just did. Similarly, you will do exactly the same thing for part two now. Now, many people have got questions on part two because some of us did not do well in part two, or we did not complete any of the activities, or some of the activities. So what do you do in that case? You still go to your marking rubric, part two marking rubric, and you look at where did you lose your marks. So in this section, I didn't do activity 2 at all. So I lost marks, okay? So I can go and speak about this one here, about this activity 2 that I've lost marks in. So I will go back to my POE now, and I'm looking for my updated and corrected part 2. So there's my updated and corrected part 2. So I'll say this question is where I lost my marks in activity 2. In activity 2, I lost marks because I did not answer the question. There was no time, or I experienced whatever errors, and I was unable to install the Windows 10 client computer. Okay, so I've got client twice. So it says delete the word. Okay. That was my mistake. This is where I lost marks. Okay. So you go through your marking rubric and you put something here and you write something about where you've lost your marks or which part of the activity you did not complete. Then what improvements could I have made and what did I learn? I could have installed a second virtual computer with the Windows 10 operating system. Then I could have connected the Windows 10 to my server domain. And then what else could you have done? Okay, so in this question it says, install the client machine, assign static IP address. That means you manually type in the IP address to the domain. Test that the client has joined the domain. Log in to the domain. So these are the things that you could have done, right? So I could have joined the client to the domain, to my server domain. I could have logged in as a user. So I can say logged in as a user. And what else could I have learned? Okay, that's all that is required. Do I need to now go and take additional screenshots, etc.? No. For this question, you don't. You just say, where did you lose your marks? Where can I make improvements? And what could I have learned or done better? Then I'm done with this one. Because remember, this part is only 1 mark. So I've done now my feedback documents. And if I go back to my marking rubric here, I can see that I've got task, the submission on the feedback. We've discussed that one. And then for the next 3 marks, it's only this one document, and I've shown you how to do that document. For the next one, part 2, I've shown you how to do the part 2 document. For your ICE activities, we've done this previously in the previous video. No further clarification is required here. So I'm not going to go through activity 2. Watch the previous videos for the explanation here. Activity 3 now speaks about the diagram. The diagram I've also done in a lot of detail previously. And look at the mark allocation. Look and see that your diagram includes the correct information. Your network devices are there, you get 5 marks for that. To label them, to say this is a router, this is a switch, this is a wireless access point, this is a desktop computer, this is a projector. Label each of them. Don't just put pictures there without labeling them. They give us another 5 marks. Name the topology, right, you need to include in your diagram topology. And very clearly it must say topology. Is it star, bus, ring? What topology is it? Name of the network area provided, network diagram, right? So here you're going to state clearly that this is a what? Local area network. It is within one building as opposed to a WAN or a CAN. And then the technology, right? So is this the Ethernet token ring network, Ethernet network? So make sure that information is all on your diagram. We've done that previously. So for activity 4 now, what needs further clarification here is if you have not completed or if you got poor marks and if you do not have this relevant screenshots from part 2, because remember, for this presentation, we opened up, let's see, where have I done my presentation? There's my presentation here. So I can see there's my presentation, right? I've included an introduction, I've included the installed server machine, and then now if I do not have the screenshots, I can put in some text. Let's see what I'm shared folder access. So here, for example, shared folder access is configured by modifying the properties of the folder. We go to the sharing tab, go to the sharing tab, add the relevant users or groups and assign read, change, or full control permissions. So here, for example, I didn't take my shared folder access. Now, you can do one of two things here. It needs to be a balance, okay? So you can't just put all text, all right? Because you can still go and get a screenshot, even if you go and take a screenshot of the internet, right? If I go and search now for shared folders, let me go and look for shared folders. So if I go here and if I say shared folders, shared folder, okay, it says Windows 10. And if I just go to images, there's a shared folder image. Can you see, right? So specific people. So it gives me an image here now. Win tips. There's a shared folder. It shows me how to share, give access to specific people, right? So if I go and take a screenshot, remember to reference, okay? So you can take a screenshot like this, and then you can put it into your presentation, but you need to acknowledge the source. So if you've taken someone else's screenshot, you'll say, this one was taken from windowstips.org, and then what date was it? All right. And then you can then narrate the story about how to share the folder. So you do not need to go to your virtual computers again if your virtual computers are not working. If it's working, go and take it and take a screenshot, right? So we're going to go back now. We're going to go back now to the mark allocation. So the narration, for me to do a recording, right? Let's say, for example, I could not do the recording. Still submit your presentation because that's only 2 marks, right? Is the presentation clear and audible? Now they give an additional 2 marks for it is clear and audible. So it's actually 4 marks now, right? So 4 marks out of the 30 marks for this is going to be for the narration. So even if there's some recording problem, maybe my mic is not working, also the recording only works if you're working with the desktop edition. If you're using the online edition of PowerPoint, we found that it does not allow to record. So I'm saying if you 100%, do the recording. If for some reason you cannot do the recording, skip the recording and continue with the rest of the presentation. Okay? What's the rest of the presentation? First slide, introduction, overview of the installed server machine, overview of the domain structure. So in my presentation here, I can see that I've done some of the screenshots. Okay, there's the installed server, and I'm speaking about what's happening in the slide. Okay, and then, so if you're not going to do a narration for some reason, right, and you're going to lose those 4 marks, then you have to include some text in your presentation. Okay, some text as the explanation. Does it make sense? So if you, for some reason, have not done the recording, then include some text in your screenshots so that we know what is this all about. All right? That is very, very important. So we've covered now how to do the presentation if I've lost marks in my part 2, or if I don't have screenshots. 1, we said go and write out a description like you see here I've done for shared folder access. I've written out a description of how to get shared folder access. Then next one we said was go to the internet, go and Google it, whatever you're looking for, find a relevant image. If you're going to copy this image and paste it into your PowerPoint presentation, copy image, and if I go to my PowerPoint presentation, and if I paste it here, where's paste? Right, I'm going to have to type in here, where did I get this image from, right? So I need to acknowledge the source. Where did I get the image from? So I can go and insert a text box here. Oh, there's my text box. So the text box, I can then type, this one came from, where did it come from? Wintips.org. Wintips.org. So I'm acknowledging the source, and then I write out what is this showing me, right? How to share the folder. So it needs to be put in some place that is visible, right? And then it needs to be clearly indicating, right? What is this image all about and what do I have to say about it? Remember, you are required to narrate it, but if you cannot narrate it, then simply insert a text box like this and then type in a description, some words about what's happening on this presentation. Let me go and have a look at the marking rubric. So I will continue in the same way now. We know how to answer this part here. And then activity 5, make sure that you've got your self-reflection report, which is answering the questions, and then self-evaluation, right? And then for the submission, we said we're going to go for the submission. How do we do the submission again? I go into my module and I look for my submission links and I go for my POE, right? There's my POE. And I'm going to select all of the files now. I'm going to say browse local files, and I'm going to go to that folder. I've stored mine in the network architecture NWAR5122. And where's my folder? There's it here. I'm then going to select all of these files. I can press the control key, hold it down, and at the same time press the letter A. It selects all of my files, and then I can say open. File is in, in use. So I need to go and close all of these files that are open. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's try it again. And there you can see. Now, can you see I've not submitted one file? I can submit all of the files by selecting all of them. I'll check to see all of them here, right? Once I have all of the files, then I will agree, and then I will click on submit, right? This is the correct way to submit it, so that when I'm marking, it's very easy for me to see that you've got all of your different documents here. And when I click on each of them, I can see exactly what you have done. So it makes me going through the marking rubric and allocating your marks much easier, so that I don't miss any of the marks and you get the maximum marks possible. So good luck. I hope this was helpful.